In this video, we're going to look at finding the structure of text. And we're going to do that by parsing. And we're going to do this parsing in spacing. So we're going to look at three different things related to this. We're going to look at dependency parsing, which is finding the chunks of meaning in their relations. We're going to look at finding the head of a sentence, which is the most important word that defines how the sentence is constructed. And we're going to look at named entity recognition, which is finding proper nouns, such as specific people and location. So one important part of this is part of speech tagging, and it tells you what type of word in the sentence each word is. So it allows you to know what a noun is and what is a verb. You can't always rely on a lexicon for this. You might be able to think, okay, run will always be a verb, hat will always be a noun, and to some degree that's true, but words can take on surprising roles. So in this case, you have the famous sentence, "You can verb anything," by William Safire. And so one way you can do this is find what roles words are taking is with dependency parsing. So in dependency parsing, sentence meaning comes from combining chunks of meaning. And these chunks fit together because certain words take arguments, like functions do. For example, let's take the sentence, "She hit the wall." So hit requires a hitter, someone doing the hitting, and a hittee, a direct object, someone being hit. And so hit defines how this sentence flows. So in this case, we can then put she as the subject and wall as a direct object. So let's take a look at this. So we're going to do this in Spacey. So here's some documentation. They just changed their documentation, and I have a hard time with this documentation. I think it's going to evolve over time and get better, but right now I have a little trouble with it. You can look to some tutorials, look through these tutorials, and they'll have you doing particular things. So in our case, we're going to go through it. So we're going to define our parser. And so recall that in Spacey, you get a lot of information about each token when it does its tokenization. We've been doing tokenization coming out of the parser, and now we're going to actually see why it's called parser, not just tokenizer. So here we're going to parse she ran, and recall in Spacey, if you're working in Python 2, everything needs to be Unicode. So let's look at this first token, the different things we get about it. This is just standard Python stuff, but then we get a whole bunch of stuff, a bunch of options we have for that token. So we can define a function that prints out the parts of speech, the part of speech tagging. We do our parsing, tokens equals parser text, and then for each token, we just print out the word, as is written, the orth, and the part of speech. So let's define that function. And now we can look at parts of speech of the sentence we've been looking at. She hit the wall. Okay, so she is a pronoun, hit is a verb, the is a determiner. Determiner is just a little helper word like the and are determiners. And then wall, of course, is a noun, and then the period is a punctuation. So let's look at now dependency parsing. So dependency parsing, for each token, it has a head and a dependency. So each word requires some other word to tell it what role it should take. That is each word except the main head word, which is the root. So let's define that, and we're just going to print out the word itself, the dependency, and the head. And so here we are with our sentence. So she hit the wall. The dependency is the role it takes, is the noun subject. Hit is the root. The is the determiner. And wall is a direct object.